And then there's a little area on the left where the hat turns into the light, so I'm indicating that with a line. And then I'm going to shade behind that. So you get the lit area of the hat and the shadow side of the hat. And we're going to hatch that all down. And that's the darkest area of the drawing, so we need to do some more hatching and really bring that tone down. And you can see how I've hatched in one direction and then basically at a 90-degree angle to that. So the hatching lines are almost perpendicular. And then he's got the light of his hairband, so we need to make that stand out. And we're going to put a little dark underneath it to make it stand out. We're going to put a little hatching on that hair that's out in front of his ear there, and drop the ear a little bit down in tone. There's a really dark behind the ear to make it stand out. And some of those hatching lines even go off of the face and the hair. So whenever I'm putting those hatching down, now I'm going across the cylinder. So first I did vertical lines, and then I did horizontal lines that wrap around the cylinder. So now we're just going to clarify the mouth a little bit and make those shapes in there a little bit more distinct. Now when you draw a mouth, you can think of that, break those shapes down into little oval shapes. So you've got on the bottom lip is 2 ovals, and they're going to be light on top and in shadow on the bottom. And then you're going to have a dark in between, and the top lip is 3 ovals, more circular one in the middle and 2 longer ones on the side, and the ones on the side are slanted a little bit. So then we're going to connect them all with the lip shape, and then we can shade those because we know exactly how to shade those ovals and spheres with a light source from the upper left. So all these things, all these parts, we're just taking them apart and we're drawing those basic shapes on top of things. So first we drew the sphere, then we break down put an indication of where the mouth is, and break those down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 smaller shapes, and shade each one of those smaller shapes and then connect them up. We're going to put a shade that sphere of the nose, ball of the nose, a little bit better. And then the shadow, it gets a whole lot darker under there. And you can see where he's got a really hard edge for that shadow, cast shadow of the nose. So cast shadows have a really hard edge. And then above that, between the ball of the nose and the eye, you can see where he's feathered it out a little bit. So you get a little soft edge, and then you see the hard edge of the nose. And then where the nose turns in between, goes into shadow, he's softened that. Those transitions between light and shade are really important. So those are where you should spend a lot of time. Making those soft transitions between the light side and the shadow side will really make a difference in your drawings. We're going to put a little more detail on the eye socket, define the upper lid a little bit, and he's got just a little indication of where the lower lid comes down. I drew my eyeballs a little small, so we're going to make them a little bit bigger. You see a core shadow on the side of his cheek and then reflected light to the right of that. So we're going to draw in that core shadow and make that nice and dark. And then past that core shadow we see a little reflected light. So it should get a little bit lighter as we go past the core shadow to the side of the face. And then the rest of that whole side needs to be dropped down in tone. And again, I switched to vertical marks here because I want to show how that drops down to the ball of the chin. And then we're going to work on that transition between light and shade on the cheek there and soften that up a little bit. Let's put a harder line on the edge of the face and bring that out a little bit more. Now you can really see the reflected light there once I darken it up behind there. Still needs to be a little darker behind the ear. And we'll put some more indications of the hair texture in there. And it still needs to be a whole lot darker in the hat. So we need a little bit more separation in value between the bottom of the hat and, let's say, his cheek. And it's always a good idea to connect up your shadow shapes. So we're going to connect the shadow shape from the face in with the shadow shape of the hair. And make that a little bit darker. We made those guidelines, but we want to break those lines as well with a little hair texture. And that shadow goes on down from the nose to the side of the mouth. And he's indicated he's got a little mustache there with just the bare indication of line. Now we're going to refine the halftone area and just put some more shading and break down that larger plane into smaller planes. So as it turns away, it's going to get darker toward the jaw. And then coming into the light, he's just got just sort of stippling marks to soften that edge from the halftone area into the light area. Now there's another area of shade that I've ignored until now, which is his forehead is all in shade. So I'm going to pull that back with some hatching lines. And redefine the eyebrows a little bit more. And then make some more indications of the hair texture coming forward. And we need to define that left eye, his right, our left. So we'll indicate the top of the eyelid and make that a little bit larger. And he's just got some very light lines to show where the bottom lid is. So you see, he kept the light for the top plane of the bottom lid and then just put two very small lines to show where the bottom of the bottom lid is. He's got a highlight on top of the eye, so we'll put those in there. So it's darker around the rim of the pupil. And then those highlights sit right on top of the pupil. It gives a little more life. Just a little bit more shading, and then we're gonna just about wrap this up. I just want to say again, the overall structure and design of this is that oval egg shape of the head, that big oval sitting on top of the head, the cylinder underneath, and then the wraparound of the coat. So if he was sitting for me in a live drawing situation, I would do a thumbnail just like this one here, where I would lay out all my big shapes. I would put in the values so I have a roadmap for my composition and I know exactly what I'm going to do when it's time to draw. So in under a minute, I can get the basic idea of the whole composition with all of the big shapes. Put in a nose, two little eyes, and a mouth, and that basically gives me all the information I need. So that would be my thumbnail before I even started this. If I was drawing from imagination even, or drawing from life, I'd take a minute and work out my big shapes and where my values are going to be and get that all working, because if you take the time to do that, that's going to increase your chances of success exponentially. Whereas if you just start drawing and hope that it's going to come out, you might not be so successful. So it's definitely worth taking the time to do a thumbnail.